Hello, I welcome you all to this wonderful lesson. This is our lesson 1. So this is lesson 1. I want us to continue with this, and I want you to follow me very well and clearly. So I want your total participation. I'm going to continue with the topic that we ended. We are going to do it nicely so that we start from its foundation. But today, this is a wonderful topic that I want us to start. It is called nutrition in living organisms. So I want us to look at nutrition in living organisms. The first thing that should come to your mind is, what is nutrition? This is the first thing that you need to have. And don't forget, even as I'm explaining this, you are writing down certain notes. You are writing down everything that I'm explaining. We are able to follow each other very well. So nutrition is a process, we say, is a process by which, so this is a process by which living organisms, so this is what I'm saying, is a process by which living organisms obtain, so living organisms get to obtain, get to consume and use food substances. Use what? Food substances. So food substances. This is what you are supposed to know. This is what nutrition is. So if a question was to come in an exam, they are telling you to say, what is nutrition? You need to tell them that nutrition is a process by which living organisms obtain, consume, and use food substances. These food substances, so the food substances that I'm talking about, those food substances that I'm talking about are what I'm calling nutrients. So those ones are called what? Those ones are called nutrients. So nutrients are food substances. And these nutrients get to contain what we call carbohydrates. So they get to contain what we call carbohydrates. They also contain what we call lipids. These lipids, I guess you know them. These are fats and oils. We also get to have what we call vitamins. You also need to know that all these are nutrients that you are supposed to know. They are also what we get to call nucleic. So we get to call them nucleic acids. They are also what we get to call proteins. So you need to understand all these things. They are also what we call, there is water. There is also mineral salts. Mineral salts. These are the nutrients that I'm talking about. So these nutrients are categorized into two types. So these ones that I've listed, these ones up to here, these ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these ones are what we get to call organic nutrients. These ones are called what? Organic nutrients. Why do we call them organic nutrients? So the reason why we call them organic nutrients, it is because they get to contain what we call carbon. They get to contain what? Carbon. The presence of carbon in them. So this is the reason why they are called organic nutrients. So this is one of the reasons. These two, the last two, these ones, we get to call them inorganic nutrients. I guess you are able to understand what I'm explaining here. Inorganic what? Inorganic nutrients. So this is what you need to know. So they are what we call organic nutrients and inorganic nutrients. So these ones which are called inorganic nutrients because they lack what? Carbon. So this is what you need to know. They lack what? Carbon. This is the reason why we call them inorganic nutrients. The other question that you need to have aside this, you need to also understand another concept. So this is just lesson 1. We are yet to do a lot of things under this particular topic. So I just want you to know this, and I want you to understand everything that I'm going to explain. You need to have a question: why do you eat food? If I ask you, why do you eat food? So this is a question I'm asking you. Why do you eat? Why do you eat? I want answers. Why do we eat? If I ask you, why do you eat? You are going to tell me that the reason why we eat, number 1, is so that we get to grow. Have you seen? So we are talking about growth here. And you need to understand that growth, this is defined as what? Permanent. It is a permanent increase. So this is the permanent increase in mass. We get to talk of mass. So permanent increase in what? In mass. So we get to eat for the purpose of respiration to take place. We know the process of breaking down. Have you seen that whole process? So those are one of the reasons why we do eat. And you also need to understand that we get to eat so that we get to protect the body. So for what? For protection. You discover that there are certain food substances that we get to eat that get to boost the body's immune system. You know that immunity, the process by which the body is made resistant to certain diseases. So that process by which the body gets to resist diseases. So there are certain food substances that we get to eat that boost the what? The immune system. So this is also another reason why we get to eat. Reasons why we eat. We get to have a lot of reasons, and even as we get to advance, even as we get to move forward, we are going to understand all those reasons and why we get to eat these nutritions. So nutrients, we are going to understand them properly. So I want you to know this. I want you to understand everything that I'm listing down here. All these things, you are supposed to know them. You need to understand them. And I guess we all have books where we are writing down these things. These are important things. So even as we advance, even as I get to teach you, I'm going to give you certain important topics that you are supposed to know. You understand that biology is very bulky. I guess this one, we all know that biology is very bulky, and there are a lot of things that you are supposed to know. This is the reason why I want you people to be studying. If you don't study, these things may become hell to you. So let's just make sure that we are studying. So food gets to be in classes. There are what we call classes of what? Classes of food. We only have 2 classes of food. So they are classified into 2 types. The first type of food that you need to understand is what we call energy-giving food. Energy what? Energy-giving food. So you need to understand what is this energy-giving food. Energy-giving food, we are just talking about what? Carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are energy what? Giving food. So each time we are talking about energy giving food, we are talking about carbohydrates. And another class of food that you need to understand, there is what we get to call protective. They are what we call what? Protective food. So these are food substances that we get to eat that protect us from certain diseases, gets to fight diseases in the body, that gets to protect us from a lot of things. So it protects the body. These foods get to protect. So protect the what? Protect the body. against, so it gets to protect the body against infections. This is what you need to know and understand. It protects the body against what? Against infections. I'm summarizing up these things so that you are able to follow me clearly, and I'm making understanding very clear so that even as you are studying at your own time, these are things that should not even put you under pressure. I said we've got 2 classes of food, but there is also another class of food which is making us to have 3. So if I tell you how many classes of food do we have, 3, you need to tell me 3. There is also another one that you are supposed to know. This one is called body building food. So body what? Body building foods. So there are certain foods that you get to eat that get to build the body. These ones are like proteins. So example, we get to talk about what? Proteins. We are going to look at all these things. At the moment, I just want you to follow me clearly and attentively. All these things that I'm teaching you, I want you to be writing them down and following at the same time. After this lesson, spare some 10 minutes and study through this. I know you are writing what is attending to this. So after doing this, you are now supposed to sit down, study for 10 minutes. Then you call it a day. This is how we get to increase and improve. So I want you to follow me clearly and attentively. You need to understand that here, the main reason why we are talking about nutrition in living organisms is so that we get to understand the carbohydrates, the proteins, the lipids, all these things, we need to understand them. And the first thing that we are going to start with, we are going to start with the carbohydrates. So we are going to start with the what? Carbohydrates. This is what we are going to start with. We will start with the what? Carbohydrates. If I ask you, what are carbohydrates? You are going to tell me that carbohydrates, these are what? These are organic. I told you that these are organic what? Organic food or compounds. So to make it simple, I will say these are organic compounds. These are organic compounds that contain. So these are organic compounds that will contain what? They are going to contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. These are the 3. So I guess you know that this is carbon, this is hydrogen, and this is oxygen. I want you to write these in full because after some time you can even be saying, what is this C? What is this H? So I want you to write in full. This is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. This is what you are supposed to know. So what are the sources of these same hydrocarbons? So we go to what? Sources. What are some of the sources of these hydrocarbons? So what are these carbohydrates? So the sources of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates. The sources of these carbohydrates. So the carbohydrates, what are the sources? Where do they come from? So number one, you discover that we get to have them from what? Sources are roots. We can talk of roots and what? Stems. We can have these carbohydrates. So this is the first one. So roots and stems, you discover that, for example, potatoes. We get to have other things like yams. All these are examples. Have you seen? So roots and stem. So from potatoes, we can get carbohydrates. We can also understand them from these ones that we get to call cereals. Have you seen? Like this. So these ones get to contain what we call maize is an example of a cereals. So we've got maize, we can talk of rice, we can also talk of what? We can talk of sorghums, all those examples. So they are just a lot. So all these things, you need to make sure that you are able to understand them. Sugar cane. These are all sources of what? Carbohydrates. So I want you to know all these things and I want you to understand them clearly to the point that if you encounter them in an exam, you will be able to answer them. I guess we are moving together, isn't it? So I guess my explanation is very clear and you are able to understand. So I would just want you to understand what I'm teaching and I want you to follow me clearly and attentively. So even as we make biology very simple, I want you to follow me clearly and attentively. The reason why I'm saying this, so that maybe we are behind writing some notes. I'm giving you chance so that you write some notes. So don't say, no, I'm talking too much like that. No. When I start explaining like this, I know that you are writing down notes now. It's time now you are writing down the notes. Because I want us to be moving together. And these things, you are supposed to be writing them in your book. So this is what I want us to be doing. So even as we advance, biology is a nice, wonderful topic. As long as you like it, as long as you develop that interest, the zeal, you are going to enjoy it. So I just want you to follow me clearly and attentively. So just follow me very well. Let us look at chemical composition. So we look at a chemical composition of carbohydrates. So we look at what? Chemical composition. We look at the chemical composition of carbohydrates. So chemical composition of carbohydrates. These carbohydrates. You need to understand when I say a chemical composition, what it is made of. So these carbohydrates, they get to have what we call a saccharide. So they get to have saccharides. These saccharides are what we call what? Sugars. This is what you are supposed to know. They are called what? Sugars. And you need to understand that there is a process by which simple carbohydrates are made complex. Or the process by which we get to have what we call simple carbohydrates. So simple carbohydrates. So let me say simple carbohydrates changing. So when they are changed now to something big, which we are calling a complex carbohydrate. So I want you to write this. You finish this. This word there. This is carbohydrate. I want you to finish it. So the process by which simple carbohydrates are made to be complex, that process is called, so the process we get to call it condensation process. It is called what? Condensation process. And under condensation process, there is also what we call loss of water molecules. They are what we call loss of what? Water molecules. So for this process to happen, for this process to take place, there are water molecules that are lost. I guess we are able to move together. So its composition is that they are made up of saccharides. So this is what you need to know. They are made up of what? Saccharides. And we get to have classes of carbohydrates. These carbohydrates are classified into different categories. And in today's lesson, I'm just going to talk about a few so that you try to understand what I get to mean. I don't want to give you a lot of work, but with this, you are able to study. You'll be able to study. You'll be able to go through your notes. Let us look at the classes. So I'm calling them classification. Classification of what? Carbohydrates. Classification of carbohydrates. So this classification that I'm talking about, I'm basing them on sugar molecules. So I'm basing them on what? Sugar molecules. These ones based on what? So don't forget, based on sugars. So based on what? Based on sugars. The first one that you need to understand is that they are what we call, so the first one, they are what we call the monosaccharides. So they are what we call the monosaccharides. These monosaccharides, the way they are, you know and understand the word mono means one, and this word saccharides gets to have the sugar. I can just say it is a sugar. So what I mean, monosaccharides, these are compounds that get to contain one sugar molecules. So they are containing one what? One sugar molecule. This is what you need to understand. This is a monosaccharide. It is a carbohydrate that gets to contain one sugar molecule. Examples of these monosaccharides, we get to have glucose is an example. We get to have what we call galactose is an example. You also need to understand the last one, which is what we get to, so we call it fructose. This is an example. So these are examples of monosaccharides. When I tell you, give me 2 examples of monosaccharides, you know that a monosaccharide is a carbohydrate that gets to contain one sugar molecule. Examples of these, we've got glucose, galactose, fructose. These are what? These are examples of monosaccharides. Away from this, we also have another one that we get to call di. Have you seen? So the moment you hear the word disaccharide, so the moment you hear the word di, it means there are 2. So here we are talking about what? 2 sugar. So we are talking about what? 2 sugar molecules. This is something you are supposed to know. 2 sugar what? 2 sugar molecules. So a disaccharide is a carbohydrate that gets to contain 2 sugar molecules. So what I mean, examples of these ones you need to understand them. Examples of these ones, we call them, they are what we call sucrose. Though these are examples. Sucrose, we've got what we call maltose, are examples. There are also what we get to call lactose. These are examples of what? Disaccharides. I guess this is understandable. I guess you are able to understand and we are able to move together that way. So these ones, since they get to contain 2 sugar molecules, so these ones, the 2 sugar molecules they contain, the sucrose, they get to contain the fructose, they contain the fructose and the glucose. Have you seen? This is what you need to understand. These ones, the maltose just contain 2 glucose sugars. 2 what? 2 glucose sugars. 2 glucose. So I'll say 2 glucose. So to make you understand, I'll just say glucose plus what? Glucose. This is what you need to know. Then we also have these ones that we get to call lactose. So this lactose gets to contain what we call the galactose and the glucose. So this is what you need to know. These are certain things you have to understand. So this is where we are going to end from. I guess you've seen this. I guess you've seen how I've explained this one. And I want you to know that this video was public. It is a public video. I made it public so that I need more people to join our class. So I just decided to make this one public. So I will just say all the lessons this week, they will be public so that we can have a lot of people that will join us. So if you are watching this video and you are not under my online lessons, this is the time that you have for you to join me. So you join me on this number. Just drop a text on WhatsApp. This is my number. I'm here to help you get a distinction. So this is my number, 0971 066747. I don't teach only mathematics. I also teach biology and sciences, physics, chemistry. All those, I'm here to help you. Thank you so much. So those of you under my lessons, after this, let me share a simple exercise that you are going to do. So let's check through the group.